Now, where are we going live? We are live. Live. I think we're on YouTube.
YouTube.
I think so.
Nice.
I have no idea where we are, man. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Zach Martin here, Kids Deserve Dads, here with my friend Seth Frentaway. Um, welcome, Seth. And welcome, everybody that's going to
Thanks.
be joining us and coming on board and seeing this in the future. We got a fun day today planned. Really cool stuff that Seth's been working on in his life and something he learned, um, in maybe not the greatest moment of his life, but that this tool that he's gotten, which is a big focus for us about today, has been uh, astronomical, or I mean, not astronomical, revolutionary in how he's seen his life and seen how to go about achieving the things that he wants and living the life of his dreams. And so, when Seth showed it to me a couple of times, every time I hear it, I love it. And he had a great story this last week when him and I were talking, and it really went well. And he just loves sharing this, and this concept is just so enlightening and empowering. And if you put your life into this framework all the time, yeah, you'll be also having all the things that you want out of your life. So, anyways, enough rambling by me. Seth, welcome, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Zach. I appreciate you having me, man. I'm excited about what you're doing, dude. I've been watching some of the stuff coming up on the social media feeds and things like that, and it's really encouraging to see that kind of thing going on. You know, as the next generation coming up, and what are we going to leave behind for the kids? And it's pretty encouraging to see a lot of these different avenues opening up to give people some direction and what might help them be fulfilled in their life. I personally, like you said, you know, I um, kind of came across some different ways of understanding relationships and how to navigate those, and had some. I've got a little bit of unique experience in that. I'm a dad, which isn't too unique, but maybe becoming a little more unique nowadays, since the whole father thing seems to be putting on the back burner socially a little bit in some ways. And I think it's like I say, it's good to see that kind of being championed a little bit more. But I'll tell that for the audience, you know, I've known Zach for quite a while. You guys may not know me, maybe some of you guys do that are listening. For those of you that do, hey, it'd be nice for you to for me to see you again. Hopefully, me being on here is a welcome sight for you. But for those of you guys that don't know me, I'm from Cheyenne, Wyoming. I'm a Midwest guy. You know, grew up with Zach. Actually, I'm a little bit older than Zach, so when we were young, we didn't really cross paths a whole lot. I mean, we kind of had in the sort of the same social circles, things like that. And But later on in life, well, really not too much later on. I graduated in '96, so I'm 45 now. Some people call that old. Some people still call that young. I don't know. You know, the older generation. I keep asking them when they're going to start calling me a man instead of calling me a boy. You know, so 45 was supposed to be the number. So we'll see if I'm now grown up. But anyways, I graduated in '96, and I got married the day after I graduated high school. You know, I do kind of have that story that seems like too good to be true in some ways. And then in some ways it seems like, how the crap did that happen? And believe me, I'm almost think the same thing a little bit. Um, but I'll tell you guys that, yeah, day after I graduated high school, I got married to my wife. We've been married for 27 years. And along the way, it's been a pretty interesting journey. And a lot of what our success, I would say, has come down to is learning how to communicate, express yourself, and also kind of see it from the other person's point of view, and then being able to reconcile your differences. Really is kind of like conflict resolution. And some of the best, and Zach, make sure you jump in and ask me any questions so I don't just ramble forever. Okay. Um, but some of the things that challenged us in our life really seemed to be more just a difficulty in communication, like I was saying. So um, the other thing that ended up doing it, you know, I went into the military, got a job, that kind of thing. You know, just started living life as like like anybody would do, just doing the best you can. And what I found out was is sometimes the best you can is not always what everybody else is understanding. When I got out of the military, I came back to Cheyenne, went to school, and then we actually adopted a bunch of kids. Really long story short, but we adopted a bunch of kids. We adopted a sibling group of 5, and then we've got another little girl that we adopted with too. So we've got a total of 9 kids, 3 of our biological kids, and 6 that are adopted. And I don't bring up the adopted part as I don't like to bring it up a whole lot, only because I don't want to try to draw a distinction between my bio kids, and the adopted kids. But it is an important part of the story that I'm going to share, because those relationships, those adoption relationships, were some of the most eye-opening ones for me to ever build in my life. And that was because you know it's sort of instinctual when you have a child, that relationship is just automatically there. It's sort of assumed, the bond and everything just kind of happens with adopted kids. It doesn't go so easily. It's not that it's not possible, but it doesn't just automatically happen. So you kind of have to earn that, work toward it, that kind of thing. And it was super eye-opening for me. And one of the reasons why is because I thought that if I was just be able to give somebody, as much love and compassion and openness that I could, they would just automatically sort of receive that back. And that's not exactly how it works, because everybody has a little bit different perspective that they're coming into things with. And so as Zach was saying, I'm going to share this with you guys. You might be like, man, it's not like rocket science, and it's really not. But when I share you a few things with you, I'm hoping that you'll see some kind of eye-opening tools, I suppose, that might help you navigate some of these scenarios. You can imagine all of these ones that I've talked about so far: marriage, parenting, adopting kids. Those are all like super high stakes scenarios. What I mean by high stakes is like kind of put you in a vulnerable position. And if the high stakes is you get rejected, and you don't, those are big deals. You're putting your whole heart and soul out into something. And those high stakes scenarios can be very volatile for people. They're also, what I found, would be opportunities for like great strength and relationship building, if you can sort of approach that in a sort of open-eyed way, an open-minded way. And so what I'll do is I'll kind of explain a little bit about how this works. And so, yeah, so we're talking about high emotions, strong opinions over high stakes. Those scenarios that all involve, I think you guys can think of scenarios in your life where those three those three things are there and present. And you can imagine how difficult they can be, from whether all the different hot button topics, and so really what I had to kind of come to the realization was, and accept, really. And if you guys don't accept it this way, then it may not mean anything to you. But ultimately, I had to take the perspective of how to deal with this as a spiritual being having a physical experience, because that's what I mean, that's what relates to me the most. Not everybody actually thinks that way, but I really think that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. And if you can relate to that in your life, what I'm about to say is probably going to help you with understanding how those two kind of work together, your spiritual and your physical experience. And so the reason why it's important to kind of keep a perspective that you're a spiritual being having a physical experience is because without the awareness that you are that spiritual being, it's kind of tough to navigate the physical experience. So for example, now I'm going to explain a phenomenon that kind of happens when, did you say something, Zach?
Yeah, no, I'm back, and
Okay.
new to StreamYard, and I'm pushing buttons.
Oh, okay. I saw you on there, and I was like, oh man, maybe okay.
No, I don't know what you can see on your screen, but anyways, I was going to ask you, like, with that, kind of want to get into some more detail on it before we get into the real nuts. But that, with that, the high stakes over high things, what does that happen all the time, or is this just very like very distinct moments and stuff in life, or is this something you can apply to every choice you make in your life?
I think it's something you can apply to every choice you make in your life. I mean, ultimately, life is a high stakes game in a lot of ways. Some are more high stakes than others. And really, the high stakes, I think, depends on the individual because there's going to be some things I feel vulnerable about that you may feel less vulnerable about and other people. So it really kind of comes down to your own vulnerability. And I'm going to explain that a little bit too when we get into the more nuts and bolts of maybe how to relate that. But ultimately, it's something that you can use in your whole life. And some people will recognize what I'm going to share as basic conflict resolution. But having the awareness of what's happening within yourself. A lot of times conflict resolution, people only look at what's happening between two different individuals. And we're going to talk about that too. But I think that some of the work, in order to be successful at navigating some of this stuff and kind of coming out with a better result or a more desirable result, you kind of have to do the work internally. And so you kind of be more aware of those vulnerabilities and stuff like that and what your fears are in relationships, generally speaking. And then so directly to your question, no, yeah, it's something you can have, and it can work in your whole life. And I think that where it's going to be most useful, a lot of times if you're not feeling super vulnerable, then you can help other people work through theirs to gain confidence that you are not there to I don't know, I guess cause any issue for them, and you can build a relationship. It may not even be your own specific issue. So yeah, it can
With
be
high
in a
energies, right?
lot
You
of
got
different
high
ways.
energy stuff, and then people are on edge, right? It's fight, flight, freeze, whatever their reactions normally are, and if you can bring that energy back down where they're not in that primal spot into a place where, okay, now I can think about what it is that's being said, and I can be just here in this moment, and then I'm not like afraid and having to like battle through this. That can help you get better results with the person you're dealing with, regardless
Exactly.
of what that is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that particularly when in the scenario that you mainly focus on, which is kids deserving dads, and the conflict, really kind of like conflict resolution between moms and dads, and really then helping our own sons and daughters navigate this sort of difficult situation that we as adults sort of put them in sometimes. And you said it right, that kind of primal instinct, because I think that the physical response that we have in those scenarios are pretty loud. They really do trigger a physical instinctual response that we don't really have control over. It just happens, right? And so that spiritual self, that spiritual sense in ourself, is what I'd like to help have some understanding of how to navigate that, and maybe sort of like tame that beast in a way, that primal instinct to either fight or flight. And those are like you've said, those are kind of the two options that you get whenever you're having that sort of automatic response to a scary situation,
Yeah,
high stakes situation.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And it's one of the things that I preach a lot with guys that I talk to and stuff too. Is like the control you have is over how you show up, right? And this is a way that you can show up to support somebody else in bringing down that energy. And when you catch yourself in these moments, you can bring yourself back down through like understanding how this works inside of you, right? Like
totally.
when you see that stuff coming up, you're like, okay, I'm in that moment now. Here's the steps I can go through, boom, 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 to put myself in a place that I can come from a place of responsibility and respect for myself, and also being gracious and honoring to the other person to help bring them back down, because once you recognize your energy, you can probably recognize theirs, and it's also elevated and negative. And by bringing that person back down and being in an even space, you can have real dialogue and real conversations, and you can get some resolution. And that's the goal.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, so the steps, you mentioned steps, and so really what I was, and I was kind of shown this, you guys. I mean, for a while, somebody showed it to me, and I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. And then I kind of put it up on a shelf, and then whenever life got real and you're looking around and saying, what the crap do I do now, and how do I make sense of what's going on around me, that stuff kind of came back to my mind in those moments, maybe even like a couple years later after I was shown it. And then it was like, man, you really need to dig deep and figure out what you're going to do here, because it's getting real. And
Yeah.
so And so I really kind of dug back into my memory bank and was remembering when it was almost like a photographic memory in my mind that came back up, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this. And after a while I studied it and it just kept applying it, and it becomes like second nature almost. And so what I'm about to share with you really does seem kind of elementary, and after you practiced it for a while, it seems even more like I can't believe I'm actually saying this, what's so obvious, out loud. But when I explain this to you, you may think the same thing too, but maybe not have the clarity of mind to remember it or keep it in play when it matters, in the moment. So you mentioned a few different steps, and one of the things that was very helpful to understand how to navigate through this stuff was to outline what's actually happening in these scenarios where we find ourselves with high emotions, strong opinions over high stakes. And we find this in all kinds of different stuff right now, just politically. It's going on in all kinds of different narratives going back and forth, and people feeling uncomfortable, that kind of thing. But so
Storming the
let's talk
Capitol
about
and stuff again.
yeah, exactly.
It's like, let's
So
just start storming the Capitol all the time. It seems like that's the thing, right? Like
yeah,
now,
everybody's storming the
now
Capitol.
somebody else is storming the Capitol,
Scream your
and
head off, and everybody will do what you want.
how do you, right? And is that getting the results you want to have? Now you look like an idiot and a jerk, and just going and screaming at people is not going to get you results you want to have. You're gonna
I usually don't have
off.
the best
And
results in winning friends doing that, so, and influence people. But
you know what? Whenever I've lost my mind and my cool, no one says, Zach, you know what? That's the way to handle that. You did that exactly the right way. Everybody goes, man, that was embarrassing.
yeah, no,
At the
but
very
what
least.
would be nice is if we had people that understood what I'm about to explain to you, and they had the grace enough to recognize that, Zach's just trying to figure out how to deal with it, with what he doesn't know exactly, just like I don't, it's a new feeling or a new scenario. It's kind of scary. Can't we just have a little bit of grace for each other that we can help each other through that? So what I'm going to describe is let's talk about the scenario, or like a room. Okay. So like if there's a scenario or a room that you and I find ourselves in, I'll be person A, you be person B. Okay. As person A, actually you be person A and I'll be person B. So that way I can ask you questions. Okay. So as person A and person B finding ourselves in those scenarios that are high stakes, strong opinions, or high emotion, strong opinions over high stakes. We both are what I'm going to describe. We're both going to be doing exactly what we're going to outline here at the same time. So just know that as we come into a room together, we're going to describe or contemplate a situation, but I'm going to talk about it as we come into the room, because it fits better for for the conversation's sake. So when we both come into a room, we find ourselves in high emotion, strong opinions over high stakes. Zach, what do you think the first thing is that you do? That's person A.
Ooh, that I do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna go inside myself. So I will shut down.
Okay. Well, I'm going to break it down a little bit more detail than that.
Okay.
And because that's actually more of like step 4. Okay.
Well, I just
And the
jumped
reason
right
I
there.
asked
I'm
the
like, you know what,
question is,
guys? 1, 2, 3. I'm past that.
yeah. So the reason I asked the question
We
is
didn't
not
practice anything.
not that you would necessarily know off the bat, but I mean, I'm asking that only to kind of get the juices flowing, and so that we all are focused on, okay,
So
we're going to break it down even more. We're going to
yeah.
fundamental stuff. So I would submit that the first thing you do when you walk into a room that's high emotion, strong opinions over high stakes is you see things, you hear things, you take in data, you're trying to take in different reference points, right?
Right.
So you collect
you're
data.
analyzing the space you're in. You're like, what's going on
Yeah.
around me?
Well, you're
Where
not
am
even
I?
analyzing yet. Okay.
Okay.
Because number 2, the second thing you do is you tell a story about what you saw and you heard. Okay. And you try to make sense of it somehow. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the third thing that we all do is, and this is the most critical one, that informs step 4, is we feel something about what the story we told ourselves about what we saw and we heard in scenarios that involve high emotions, strong opinions over high stakes. Right. And so even when I just say that right now, people on the outside of that emotional involvement can say, man, that sounds like a risky proposition to feel something about the story I told myself that involved high emotions, strong opinions over high stakes. You can see how, if you just relate that even into your own life, how the emotions obviously get all the stories and everything very clouded, or could get them very clouded. but that number 3 really informs what you do in number 4.
Well, and the
And
story is such a big thing. Like people tell
mhm,
themselves stories all the time. Like, you know, especially in family court and guys going through custody battles and stuff and trying to be involved. And I can't make any more money. I don't get to be. I don't get to see my kids every day, so I'm not really a dad anymore. How does this work out? That how am I going to go forward in my life? I feel like I'm worthless. And they tell these stories about being worthless, not being capable, not being
yeah,
supported. Feeling put out and or like I need to get back involved with my kids' lives. I got to figure out how I'm going to be more impactful. And this other person is doing these things to me, and they tell the story about how they're being oppressed by somebody else and they're a victim, right? And
yeah,
that's a story people tell. And in the shared parenting, non-custodial parent movement, especially from that perspective, those people, and I am one, so I can say those people, that
yeah,
they that you think I have felt coming from a place of and personal responsibility. I have felt um, attacked and like
mm.
I'm a victim of circumstances that I am out of control of, and I think this is the way to get power back. So, anyways, go on.
Yeah, no, no, totally. And like I say, they're very vulnerable, and everybody deals with them a little different. So we're gonna feel something about the story we told ourselves about what we saw and what we heard. High emotion, strong opinions over high stakes. Number 4, you've got as a spiritual being having a physical experience. I'd submit that we have 3 options. Okay. 2 of them are heavily informed by the physical response, which we don't really have control over. We have a high stakes scenario, and our body tells us one of the things to do: fight or flight, right? I mean, if you're sensing a high stakes scenario, which is often synonymous with danger, you're either going to run or you're going to hide. Is what most people are even aware. Or I don't know about most, man. All I know, you guys, listen. I got to make sure I preface this, okay? Like, I'm not I think I can confidently say that I've been successful at having a family. I didn't do that alone. It's not like as if I got some special family power or something. What I'm trying to do is just share with you guys something that has really helped my life be successful. It is a unique story that I have, and I do think that it will really help you. But at the same time, you guys, I mean, it's not like as if I'm the guy who's got all the answers. I don't want to pretend that either. I just hope that what I'm going to share with you next is really going to help you. Okay. So, so you've got 3 different choices. You can get violent, you can get silent, okay? Or the third one is make friends. You can make friends. Now let's talk about violence and silence real quick. Violence and silence takes off on several different forms. I mean, silence is kind of elusive. It's pretty elusive because sometimes people will pretend like everything's okay in a high stakes scenario with the story they told themselves. They'll pretend like it's okay, when
You
it's
already had a
really not.
girlfriend say, "I'm fine. I'm fine. It's fine. It's
Yeah,
all
and then all of
fine."
a sudden it's not.
Right,
Then all of a
right.
sudden it's not.
That's
Right.
silence. That's silence before the violence, and that's not okay, right? And that's what we're talking about right here.
Well, it's certainly not helpful, right? It certainly
Yeah,
doesn't come to make friends, right? The conflict, we
yeah,
want to resolve this conflict. We want to try to come together. I honestly think that most people, particularly, two couples that come together, they have a child together now, right? There, it's at least at some point in their relationship, they thought that it was that they liked each other enough, you know, to do these kind of things together. And then somewhere along the way, um, I think the stakes are upped, right? As soon as somebody brings home the little stick with the line on it, stakes just really got higher, and that elicits a lot of fearful response, which is fight or flight. And a lot of people will fight about it because they want to protect their vulnerability or whatever it is. And there's a lot of nothing I'm saying right now is as simple as it might sound, because you've got a lot of work that people need to do, and even to identify their own vulnerabilities to know what to do with it. But anyway, so you can fight about it, right? You can yell and you can holler and scream. Those seem like pretty obvious type things, that are not going to be beneficial. However, we go into them a lot. We revert to them a lot. Why? Because I think that when we have that physical experience, or that physical reaction we're having to the fear we're feeling of vulnerability, it clouds our self-awareness that there actually is a third option.
But
Um,
I think a lot of people. That's a funny point, and totally true. We're raised in families seeing how to do these things, right? You grow up learning how to
mm,
do life, and through the experience that you saw from your parents and the people that guided you.
right.
And when it comes to those kind of real high stakes moments and stuff, it's automatic, right? You're not there going, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna yell at this person and tell them that they're messing up and that they hurted my feelings and stuff, and I'm gonna put all these things out there on this person. You're not no one's consciously thinking about how they're doing that, because if they wouldn't do it that way. The problem is that we're running on that automatic response, and that what comes natural when you're overloaded, you're letting that steam out, right? You're letting that kettle burst, and it just comes out, and that's where you get yourself in trouble, when you say things you don't want to say, or you do things that you don't want to do, and in a cooler moment you wouldn't. And this is the process to bring yourself back.
Yeah, that's totally right. And when I say, when you say
I got a fly
something you
harassing
don't
me.
want to do, I think it's really what's that?
A fly landed on my
Oh, you got a
hat.
flag.
So
Okay.
my
Um, that I don't want
counterfeited.
to do this or don't want to do that. It's interesting because I think a lot of times people say, no, I actually really wanted to yell at that person, or no, I actually wanted to,
Right. But you wouldn't want to
but
when you look back on it in hindsight. That's
they
not the
didn't
way
want
you
to get
go.
they didn't want the results that came with it. They weren't expecting
Right.
those, right? And that's the part I'm getting at, is like that, we are made up of two things here. We have physical desires, and we have spiritual responses to those physical things. And so sometimes, the physical wants and stuff are pretty loud, and they're pretty tempting, they're pretty enjoyable sometimes, and having this self-awareness in the moment is what I'd like to try to invite people to do, because that's where you're really empowered to make a difference, to lead your family, to keep it together, and to build successful bonds and relationships. And it really kind of comes down to perception, right? Remember, we tell ourselves stories about what we saw and we heard. And remember, I was explaining that you, as person A, are going to see and experience the same things I am coming into the same room. So if we come into the same room, see the same set of facts, but come up with a different story, who's lying, right? And that's what it kind of comes down to, is who's lying here, right? So I don't know if you guys have ever seen, and maybe I'll do maybe I can present here or something and show you my screen, or maybe pull in another picture, but I don't know if you've ever seen the picture of it's a young woman and an old lady, and it's kind of like an illusion picture, where if you look at the picture one way, the same lines on the page you may perceive it to be like an old woman, right? But if you look at the same picture and you look at the perception a little bit different, what you'll see is a young, beautiful woman. And so the question really is if you and I are both looking at this same picture, and you see an old woman and I see the young lady, who's right and who's wrong? Well, neither of us are right or wrong. It just is what it is. And we need to be willing to accept that it's totally valid and totally possible for someone to look at the same set of facts, the same picture, the same lines drawn on the page, and come to a completely opposite but equally valid conclusion, right?
Right.
Um,
One of the things uh, that I talk about with those is sunglasses. Like you live your life from your own perspective with your sunglasses on, and you have your
yeah,
sunglasses on, and I have my sunglasses on, and you don't notice your sunglasses because you have them all the time. Your life is colored by the vision, by the shade of the sunglasses that you have, and
yeah.
everybody's got a little different shade of vision through their sunglasses. And so when we see things, if it's a white shirt and you got green sunglasses and I got red sunglasses, we aren't seeing the same thing. Even though we're looking at the exact same white shirt, you're gonna see it as green, and I'm gonna see it as red, and I'm like, "You're Seth, you're an idiot, dude. That thing is obviously freaking red.
Yeah.
Where are you getting this from, right?" And you're like, "Zach, it's green, bro. Like, your shirt's green, and that guy's shirt is also green, and it's because of the shading and the life experiences we have that give us those sunglasses. And only when you notice that you have that perception, can you then change it? That you have that biasy based on your sunglasses, can you remove them and then be able to see from other people's perspectives?
Yeah, it's totally right. And what I was trying to do here was I was going to show you guys this picture. I don't know if you can see it, but this is the picture I was talking about. Can you see that, Zach? Not really, huh?
Let
Real
me see. Let me see.
fixated.
Wait, one second. Let me see if I can do this. No, that did me.
Didn't really work. Okay.
It did not work. It sounded good though. I like
Well,
the
I tried anyway.
idea.
But here's the thing, Zach, you're totally right. And I'll tell a little story. It's a pretty safe story about the first time I really had an eye-opening experience that, you know what, maybe somebody's legit seeing this different than what I am. um and this was really with my wife. I mean, she's my best friend, dude. I mean, we've just like anybody, married 27 years, you guys, but
So you guys have been together for like 30 years or something like that since like the beginning of time
well, I
that I
met
know you
I
guys.
met Amanda when I was in eighth grade. I remember
Yeah.
I was in eighth and she was in seventh grade. So we've known each other a long time.
Yeah.
That whole time through junior high and high school, everybody has their, ups and downs, on and offs, kind of, boyfriend girlfriend relationship kind of thing. We had that too. And we still, 13 years into our marriage, that was where things got really real. And we were like, okay, well, what are we actually really going to do here? What are we doing? And I was pretty naive at that time of recognizing, how somebody has a different valid perspective at the time. I'll give you guys a little bit of backstory. I was on the road a lot. Okay. So I would travel around, and I was a traveling salesman type guy. And I think for my wife, who is somebody who she stayed home with the kids, that's what she always wanted to do. Is one of the things I loved about her the most. We kind of wanted to have a traditional family type. Traditional is supposed to be a bad word these days, but the truth is, and maybe if we ever get into talking about it, I'll say, what, you guys, from one guy who's lived how I have, and then watching how much misery that I've seen other people in broken homes and families and relationships. Hands down, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't have done it different. This has been something that is fulfilling in life, and I would encourage anybody to follow that same path. um and you find out that more as you get older and older. And if there's one thing that I could try to help somebody do, is understand that don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Lean into that kind of relationship and that kind of vulnerability, that kind of lifestyle. Your kids are going to benefit from it, and you will too. Little bit of preachy choir there, but I guess, or preaching, but I
I think
so
it's all
one
good
time.
advice, especially for like younger generations and stuff, like the other 40-year-old guys, we've already gone through that experience. But if you got somebody on here who's 20, 22,
Well,
trying to figure
especially
it
like
out,
the chicks,
what
dude,
a good opportunity.
because I think like the girls are
We
being
should do that.
told so
We
much.
should have that. We should have a conversation all about that, because I feel like that's 100% exactly the problem we have. Empowerment, and that girls should be like boys, and
Well, I
girls should
think
be
I
like boys
think
and
that
boys.
there's yeah, and I think that, sorry, I keep stepping on you a little bit. I don't know if there's a little
You're
bit of
okay.
delay and I start talking. Um, but yeah, I think that there's sort of a narrative that it's like a taboo or not cool thing to lean into to being a mom and that kind of thing. And uh, it's kind of sad, because I don't think that we have to try to make a balance between this physical and spiritual experience we're having. And I think that women particularly are very fulfilled by having kids and having a family. I know as a father, is a big thing for me. um, that makes your life feel fulfilled. I mean, look, every living thing in the world, if you just break it down to basics, every living thing in the world is trying to procreate, have kids or offspring, and leave a better world than it came into. And that is the one thing that has been most fulfilling in my life. And back to what I was saying, though, in 13 years into our marriage, I remember we were really struggling. And there was a time my wife came to me, and I think she had kind of like this idea of being on the road was sort of more glamorous than it really was. Um, but nevertheless, when I would come home, she said to me, and I would maybe tell her something about the experience or something that happened on the road or whatever, and I would say, "Man, you don't even know how cool this was." It's like, just as a phrase. I didn't really mean anything about it. Just kind of like, "Oh, dude, you don't even know." You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. But for her, um, she kind of took it like I was saying to her that, like, she wasn't experienced enough to know, or she's just somebody who has been, um, sitting at home with the kids, doesn't really have kind of like an informed type thing. It was like I think she kind of took it like I was down talking to her. I had no idea that I was even sending that message. Like it didn't even cross my mind. I would never, I genuinely did not, I would never and I just never have think that about my wife. She's like the coolest person ever. And I just never really had a desire to put her down that way. So I was super defensive about being accused. I felt like I was being accused of something, right? And she kind of had a little bit of she's more of a silent person, so I didn't even see it coming until all of a sudden it was there, which is one of the reasons why it's not good to go silent, right? So what we want to do is recognize that those kind of things can and do happen frequently, with even some of the simplest things in communication. So we really have to be willing to step outside of ourselves and our own perspective, in order to go to dialogue, right? So if we're coming to dialogue, I would say this is the make friends option. So you can fight or flight, or you can make friends. And the way to make friends is, in well, you basically kind of engage with all the virtues, right? So first and foremost, and I don't know that these are anywhere in a specific order, but they just need to be present. Okay, in the venture to go to dialogue or conflict resolution, make friends with somebody. The first one in my mind is you have to be honest, right? Because you have to be honest with yourself first. And if you're not really, having a lot of integrity in approaching that scenario, dude, everybody's gonna smell it out. Like you'll know, and it won't be genuine. And then you won't be able to actually lead yourself to be humble, which I think is number two, because you have to be willing to accept that the story you told yourself about what you saw and you heard, you have to be willing to accept that there's a 95% chance that at least, um, um, it could be explained in 180-degree way and still be valid, right? You have to be willing to accept that's at least possible. That doesn't mean that it always is, right? But you have to be willing to accept that's at least possible, so that you can hear the other person's perspective out and not only just see it from your point of view. Like I say, I mean, if I felt like I was being accused of being rude or dismissive to the person that I cared the most about in my life, and felt like that I was out trying to serve in everything that I did. And so that felt hurtful to me. That felt really vulnerable. They gave me a reason I felt like I wanted to fight. Right? Those are high stakes, strong opinions over, or high emotions, strong opinions over high stakes. And to be told that or to have that kind of what I thought was being told to me, um, was something pretty scary. And so that fear response, is something that it's better to try to avoid and not try to invite people into. And I think that if you're honest and you're humble, it's really likely to lead you into compassion and patience and, long suffering and love unfeigned. And if we can all kind of, if we can, um, I guess, gravitate to those types of responses, to high stakes scenarios, rather than, fight or flight type of reactions. And I would call those reactions, because I think that they're more, something that's physically, that we're pushed into, uh, through those physical responses. So if we can lean into those others, I think we end up with a lot better results.
I think those are great qualities to have and stuff. When I think about those in those moments with myself, how do I come out and respond? I usually the qualities that I think are important that I usually step into and I recommend everybody step into is open, honest, and responsible. And personally
Mm.
responsible for those feelings and stuff. Because if you take personal responsibility for your actions and for your thoughts and your feelings, you're coming from a place of integrity at that moment in time, and taking accountability for the things that you have said and done, and whatever your actions respond. But being honest, I mean, that's the most important thing. If you're someone's accusing you of cheating and you did, and you're saying no, I didn't, how can you build a relationship with this person and continue to grow? You're lying to them and to yourself, and now your whole relationship and your whole life is a fraud. And how can you be trusted? Um,
Yeah,
so
totally. And I
yeah,
think sometimes that being honest with ourselves is a little bit difficult, because not a little bit, it's a lot of difficult, because we 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 are so convinced of what it is that we are experiencing, that it's hard to look at ourselves and say, well, maybe you could be a little bit more objective, and you don't really have to feel so vulnerable in this area, or maybe you didn't have to, maybe what you thought was so important to you is really not, and maybe it's really, you thought it was A and B, but really what you were doing was trying to hide from C.
Yeah,
And so you never really even looked at it, because I mean, like, by definition, right, if you're feeling vulnerable about something, it's very hard for somebody to even acknowledge that they're feeling vulnerable about something, because I don't know about you, but for me, vulnerabilities are something I like to try to avoid. I don't really like to be putting myself into a vulnerable scenario. So because of that, I tend to not even acknowledge them wherever possible. I try to just act like they're not there, right? I mean, if you ever have a person in your life, a lot of times it's a dad, right? If you think about like different things that your dad did or didn't do in your life, and you're like, why didn't you ever talk to me about these kind of things? Like, aren't we like a really close relationship? Why can't you tell me that when you were young, you had a vulnerability about XYZ girl, or what did you actually feel when you went in to go talk to your boss, and you felt inadequate, and how did you overcome that? Those kind of things. Sometimes men especially don't share those kind of things and talk about them. But I think one of the things, at least in my life, that's been I don't know, as a young man, you try to become more competent in life, right? And the more that I can lean into those vulnerabilities, then rather than react to them by either ignoring them or avoiding them or going around them, then become more competent at handling different things in different scenarios. Makes me more effective. I feel better about myself. I get better relationships. So, interestingly enough, the way to overcome those things is to lean into the vulnerability rather than avoid it. And instinctually, you're kind of trained through that physical. You don't really have much of a choice in how you physically respond to those. It's just that you need to have the awareness that you actually have, you're empowered to do something with it. As
beautifully.
strangely as it might sound, I kind of see myself, and I think other people are, is in a way sort of like an avatar, right? Like, where you have this, you sort of have the ability to spiritually kind of navigate. You are taming the animal, right? That you're in, I guess, in a way. That seems super simplistic, but I am trying to simplify it in talking about it this way, because I'll give you an example. When I tend to be more of the violent guy, right? Like, not like I'm running around hitting everybody. Don't get me wrong, okay, or anything like that. But I just tend to have more of a defensive response, right, or a reaction to those kind of things. And I remember one day, I was explaining to somebody, and they said to me, first off, I was amazed, because they never realized that there was actually a third option. They always just thought it was, well, I either get to fight or flight or something. They didn't know what to do. And it kind of broke my heart, because I was like, no, really, you guys, you have another option. Well, after I explained to him, they said, well, how do you do that in the moment? I was like, well, you certainly don't figure out how to do it in the moment. You know what I mean? You actually, you kind of go through and sort of um, learn to love yourself and learn to be okay with those scenarios before you ever even get in them. And then the next thing you know, when you find yourself in a scenario where you're about to blow up or something, you actually are responding in a way that seems out of body, because you guys, I really think this is like, this doesn't come from a physical response. You don't
It's
get.
practice, right? Like, you have to be thinking about it.
Yes.
So when that scenario happens, you've already thought about how you react in that scenario. When you're going through these experiences, it's not a, you know what, I heard it one time from Seth, therefore I got it, right?
Yeah.
It's a think about it, it's a be about it, see that scenario in your life, see that
Hmm.
way that it comes up, and then think about how you're going to react, how you're going to respond, and then it's a process of continuing to do that. And then when you do it and you do it great, reward yourself. When you don't do it good, think about it and think how you're going to do it better the next time. And then it's a constant process. It's no one has it down. Everybody's always working on it. Seth still blows up, I guarantee it, and so do I.
Mhm.
but it's not because we don't have the skills and we haven't practiced. It's because this is the automatic place, and the change to do it this way requires forethought, preparation. It's all the things about being. It's like what they say, like being lucky, right? Like you're not lucky. We're prepared.
Mm.
We're
It's
skilled in the
prepared.
arts. Yeah, and when that opportunity comes, we're like, this is our moment, and now we put in place the tools that support us getting the results we want to have.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a
That was a
kid,
lucky
one of the
moment there.
things yeah, one of the things that when I was a kid, we had horses, okay?
Yeah,
I live out in the country, and I always wanted to have, like, motorcycles and four-wheelers and stuff, but we never really
yeah.
had a
I
whole
only have horses. Oh, Dad, you're the worst.
well, just like any other
Yeah,
kid, you gotta have
right.
something bigger and better and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Well, part of the reason why I wasn't that excited about horses at first was because, the horses we had, I mean, if you get close to them, they'd rather kick you than let you pet them or anything. So I wanted something that I could just get on, hit the throttle, and it would just go anywhere, right? And I could jump hills, and it would never push back at me, it would never fight with me, it would never want I never had to convince it to do what I want it to do. Um, Horses were different. I mean, and frankly, the way that I was trained or taught to handle horses, like I'm from the West, man. I mean, we're like, get on them and make them do it. You know what I mean? It was like, you don't take, you're the boss, you get on and you make them do it. Um,
yeah. Break that horse.
yeah, you want to break them, right? What are we breaking? Well, are we breaking their spirit? What are we breaking? Yeah, we're kind of breaking their spirit. Well, the interesting thing is I didn't really want to do that. I didn't like that. I like a spirited horse. I like one that has that's kind of fun to be around and but nobody wants to get hurt with one. And so what I what I actually got in the habit of doing was assuming that it was my role to come in and sort of force something or someone that I wanted to have a relationship with to see it my way and to do it my way, because they just needed to trust that I was going to be taking them to the right place, and I was going to ask them to step over the right log or go through the right river, and they shouldn't be asking me, wait a minute, I don't like that. So what I learned though was really just like a dog or anything else, you need to ask for that relationship. You build that relationship and you build that trust. And I think that a lot of the ways we do that is actually lean into that vulnerability because when you're willing to be vulnerable, other people realize, or animals even, they realize that they can be vulnerable with you and they can trust you with that vulnerability. So it's a lot about a relationship building than it is forcing someone to do X, Y, or Z. As a little kid, when you want to go teach your kids, you kind of have there's some extent where like you do have to keep them away from danger. You don't really ask them, "Hey, let's have a discussion," so that you don't put your hand on the hot stove. Everybody uses the hot stove example, right? Well, yeah, you don't really try to talk that through with a 2-year-old. You don't let them do it, right? When they touch the hot stove, then you might be able to try to have some type of discussion with them. But around like 8 or 10, something like that, 12, dude, they're going to do what they're going to do. So 8 to 10, somewhere around there, you can start to have a little bit more of an abstract discussion with them. Sometimes kids can understand a little bit younger or whatever, but you kind of gradually go into that. But what you're doing is trying to train them to be aware of their self, or training sounds bad. The word train, I don't know why it kind of sounds bad to me, but it's like you're not trying to force somebody or anything, into it is what I'm getting at. And you're leading them to something, um, rather than, or really asking them to follow. Because I always hear these people be talking about that you're supposed to be a leader, but then when they act like leaders, or when they say they're being leaders, they're not really leading, they're herding, right? They're out there with like a shepherd's cane telling you get in the pen, and they're chasing you around, they'll smack you if you don't go. Well, by definition, how can you be leading somebody from behind? They're not following you if they're in front of you. So, and if they aren't wanting to follow you, then maybe you should be a better communicator and persuading them and giving them a reason to follow. And that's usually not going to happen if you're constantly exciting the fight or flight response in someone rather than inviting them to come to a place of understanding and frankly safety in a dialogue and in a loving communication between father and daughter, son, wife, friend, coworker. Um, relationships are so precious, and they're they're the thing that makes life worth living. And I think that being aware of this going on is something that has really helped me in every way, whether it's from, like I say, from just helping my kids to being successful at work. I really would hope too that some of this, I watch, some of your situations, Zach. I know how kind of things went down with you guys, and that was tough, dude. What I would like is if there's some way that I can help people resolve that before anybody's even trying to figure out, hey, what do we do with the kids? Because kids do deserve dads. They also deserve moms. And I personally think that kids deserve both a mom and a dad. Um, and I think it's best for, I think almost every kid. I don't know if anybody would say, boy, I'm sure lucky to be grown up in a house that doesn't have both my mom and dad in it. You know, there's not a whole lot of kids, I think, that would say that. So I don't know if you guys are even. Could you even hear me, Zach? Because you kind of like were jumping
Yeah.
off and on. Okay,
Yeah, I heard
so
everything you said.
you heard it. Okay, so
Yeah.
I for me, from my perspective and where I'm at, you guys, and I'd love to hear some feedback on it, and maybe have a discussion at some point. I don't know if today's the day, if we got enough time for that, but
Right.
I'd love to have some discussion with people about these kind of things, and maybe even discuss different scenarios with them and help them understand that there's different ways that they can perceive what's going on with them. They can make their decisions on how they want to deal with it and stuff. But I think it's
Yeah.
super useful to at least be aware and then know what tools are available to you to navigate to the best result that works for you. And I don't know. Hope that helps.
Yeah.
Does that
No,
is that clear as mud, or where do you want me to expand on that?
super clear as mud. I think I don't know there's any expansion, and the thing is listening to that conversation over and over again, and
Yeah.
maybe doing one where we're just like super pointed and I don't say anything, I let you just have the charts and stuff and we go through it. I mean, Seth has made a really nice chart that kind of explains this whole process, um, and only the chart makes sense, I think, when you're explaining it as opposed to like not. And so,
Yeah,
so,
like if you yeah, the visuals do help.
for a
But
future
I think
discussion
that
to have and stuff too. I think that the concept's the important thing. It's recognizing yourself in that place, in that moment where you're going, where it is a high stakes, where it is a high energy thing, and then making that conscious decision of how you're going to show up and how you
yeah.
want the results to be, and it's a conscious decision to override the instinctual reaction that you would normally have. And when you
Yeah, and
make
I
that
mean, you want to be
decision, that's where
empowered,
you go.
right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just be frank with you guys. Some of where I learned some of this was in a treatment center. I have family that I love very dearly, and some of them needed some professional help. And the specific place we went to didn't just kind of look to try to help that specific individual, because they realized, as a lot of people are a lot of institutions are coming to acknowledge and embrace, is that this is really kind of a family issue, right? A lot of times with you having an individual. So I don't know if you guys ever seen like there's that TV show called like Intervention, I think, or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
they always bring in that person to the family, right?
Right.
And that's because a lot of
Bringing me
the
into the
issue.
hotel lobby. What's going on in here?
Yeah, yeah. I always think it's so weird because I'm like, dude, you can't tell me that you were coming to a random hotel lobby and had no idea what's going on. So,
You're getting
but
interviewed on like on the
I
camera
don't
and
know how
stuff.
they
I have
pull
no
that off.
idea.
It's kind of like the catfish dudes, you know? I'm like, how does the
I
catfish,
love
like,
that
how do
show.
you not know?
There's a whole production studio rolling through. There's totally
Yeah.
oblivious. Totally oblivious.
Yeah, yeah, I had no idea. Yeah.
What? You
But
guys rolling on this?
yeah, but but it is totally true, I think. And that's what we did, was we went, I went and I would be with my family member couple times a week. and we did this for like 3 months, and this was one of the things that they were trying to help us to understand so that we could respond better in our relationship to the difficulties or the challenges that we have, and we wanted to be empowered with different perspectives and tools to help us do that, and that's
How
really
is
all this is.
how has using these tools in your life changed your life?
It's made it much more rich, because I don't have as much turmoil in relationships that I did before. And I think that anybody who knew me from those back in those days knew that. I mean, I told you I kind of responded with violence first. I mean, wasn't there, didn't have no domestic violence or anything like that. I'm talking about like when I was a teenage kid, and sort of my instinctual response is to kind of fight about it. And
You're a smart guy. You got a sharp tongue.
I have a sharp tongue, yeah, and yes, you're right, and so it's not necessarily just physically fight, but yeah, I would argue or fight, and I still do to a certain extent. I love to talk. I don't really. I like shallow discussion, but I also like. I'm the guy that if you show up at the bar with, I'll talk to you about this kind of stuff at the bar, because
Yeah, you
it's
are.
still fun to be there, and I love the social and all that stuff, and I love to have fun, but it's not really fun if it's shallow. So, and especially if you can have something meaningful to discuss about, this stuff is exciting and fun to me because it's sort of empowering, and I don't feel like so clamped up and not knowing, I guess I don't know. I love building relationships, and that's a vulnerable thing to do, So you kind of have to put yourself out there, and if you're not understanding the games, you either can get silent, don't say anything, or you wear your emotions on your sleeve, and when things don't go the way you perceive they should, when you're trying to engage in that, then you become defensive and that kind of stuff. So it's really changed my life in that way. Just yesterday, I was up at the hospital with my mom. My mom's in the hospital, and she can be okay, we think. But it was pretty high stakes, up in the hospital. And
Yeah.
my mom, she's under like some anesthesia and some drugs and stuff. She's got some pain meds and what. And so when I went up there, there was some confusion that was going on between the caregivers and her. What really was coming down to, and mom, when you watch this later, I promise you I'm not bad mouthing you, but this is true. Okay, you were pretty hopped up on whatever they gave you, and she was really convinced that what she was telling them, they just weren't listening to understand. Okay, but the truth is, she was telling them and very convinced that what she was saying was what she meant to say, but it made no sense. Okay. So it made this scenario, in a high stakes scenario where somebody's life is on the line. It made it where like the patient now is wanting to argue with the doctors and everybody else because she's trying to get clarity. And the doctors now are saying, what the heck is this lady over here freaking out at me for? I'm just trying to help her. So they're like, I got money other people to deal with. They don't want to be dismissive of her, but they got to get going. So he can understand this high stakes scenario where this communication is not working very well. And they don't know each other personally, right? So be able to give each other grace in those moments is a little bit difficult to do. Well, because I've practiced these different things, and I don't want to try to pretend that I always do it right. Okay, guys, I'm not a perfect person, but because I have practiced them, when I went up there, I was able to kind of help both sides come to a resolution that was like, oh, mom, listen to me, okay? And like I can speak to her in a way that makes sense to her and speaks to her concerns, that doesn't dismiss them, but helps her understand a little bit better about what's happening in that moment. So now she doesn't have to feel so anxious about whether or not she's being dismissed or being not taken care of the way she would like to be or whatever. And so those are even just in the small things like that, but that's the biggest way. And I tell you, it saved my marriage, you guys. And to a lot of extent, it saved my life. But only seeing that you have an option of fight or flight, those aren't options, man. Those aren't living. Those are reacting, those are running, those are hiding, those are defensive. That's not offensive living. That's not and I think that,
It's not
living lives in
proactive,
those.
right? Like you're just in response to all the things that are going on around you, as opposed to like I have a vision and I'm on a path and I'm
Yeah.
gonna stay on that path. And through the turbulent waters, and get myself where I want to be at. But when you're just responding with emotion on every spectrum, you're just going from emotional experience to emotional experience with
Yeah.
no true vision of who you are and how you want to be in this world.
There's no
And
empowerment.
yeah, and so you're just floating.
I was listening to, I don't know if you guys ever listened to Jordan Peterson. But was listening to Jordan Peterson one day, or maybe he was just on a guest on, maybe it was Joe Rogan or something. But he was talking about how, like, if you want to be goal oriented. Okay. And like, so a lot of us, and this is me included, you guys may recognize this in your own life. But we often are enamored by so many different things, that, like, I'll describe this. Like, I don't know if you guys do this too, but like, if I had like a vision or an idea or something that I wanted to try to share with somebody come to me and say, well, tell me about it. And because I'm seeing this, it's such a complex scenario that either I'm envisioning or experiencing or whatever that they're asking me to communicate. And I feel so overwhelmed by all the details that I'm like, I'm not sure where to start. So for example, if I'm sitting in a room and somebody says to me, well, describe the room to me, I'm like, well, where do I start? In the picture in the background, you see me now, right? Do I start with the stone fireplace, or do I start with the hearth, or do I start with the couch, or do I start with the color of the couch? How about the ceiling and the lights, or how about the floor? Where do I start? Books in the background to start telling, trying to describe to it. Well, if you don't have any place to start because you're considering so many other different areas, then thinking about that, you really are kind of aimless. You don't really have any direction. And so because of that, you feel anxiety, and it will compound that fight or flight response. So if there's something that you can do within yourself, that just even, and I really think it's accepting and being aware that you actually do have control over this. You can pick a place and get started. So if I start with the stone wall, and I can tell you about the stone wall, yeah, you don't see a room yet. But if I describe the stone wall and then I say, okay, now that we got that taken care of, now we can come over here and look at this and see the books in the background. And do you see the fireplace? And pretty soon, after doing the work, you're prepared that when somebody walks into your room, you can describe it with detail and clarity and succinctly, so that way, you can be a benefit to bringing the resolution, that you both want. And it's sort of magical, like, in some ways. It seems super simple, and it is, but it's a little bit difficult to navigate when you're in those scenarios. That fight or flight response is friggin' loud, bro. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So I think if, yeah, those are some of the ways that it's really benefited me. I could go on a lot of different things,
yeah,
from every scenario that I almost am dealing with daily with my kids. My daughter's about to have a baby, which is pretty awesome. And
yeah.
so she's
Congrats.
struggling with, man, I just want this baby out of me. And some people could be like, dude, just stop whining and complaining,
Right,
right? Because they feel anxious about somebody else getting into their day, that now, you mean I got to carry some of your anxiety too? No, you don't have to carry it. Just listen to her. Let her
right,
talk, dude. Just be
right.
there
Let it
for her.
ramble on, and then yeah, and be supportive.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to
Right.
own any of it.
Yeah,
Um, so anyways, yeah, man, I'd love to, you guys out there listening. Yeah, this is kind of who I am. This is my life. There's a lot of different things that I do in life, and I at least as far as profession, that kind of things, and maybe we'll get into that someday too.
yeah.
But
I love all the jobs.
ultimately,
You're master entrepreneur, like
jack of
all
all
over the
trades,
place.
master of none.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I think a visionary and like you have some of the greatest ideas that I hear of, and I'm like, man, like that is so cool. Stuff that I would never have thought about. And then you dive in so deep into everything that you go into. Like you're not just like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna do this and do it superficially. You know all the details of all the different angles of all the different scenarios that are going on. And I think maybe this process helps you to get into that, but also
yeah,
you practice this stuff all the time and you're always working on that. You're one of those guys who wants to know all the nuts and bolts, who wants to see how the whole thing from top to bottom operates and what you go about doing it. And so it's really it's pretty incredible to see how much you've dove into so many different topics and you've crossed different. I mean, you've gone all over a different place in the spectrum of jobs and starting new businesses in and some being really successful and some not, but that you never quit. And I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I have tended to do that. I might, I think Amanda gets a little bit like, "What the heck are you doing? Can't you just pick something?" And she's right. She's totally right.
Hey,
In a
I
lot of
think it's
ways
something new
too.
today, but I just
Yeah, I
picked
think that's something new
something
today.
different, babe. I'm on to it.
Yeah, I
This
mean,
is the
Zach, when you
one.
when you called me and said, "Hey, man, do you think you'd want to do this?" Looking around a lot of different things that I'm trying to do and hoping for, are going to come through. But there's one thing that in my life that I feel most successful about. I've had some good wins, I've had some good wins, and I've had some not so good attempts. But at the same time, the thing that I've been most successful about is my family. What do I mean by success in a family? Actually, I said this to you once, and you said to me, "Well, your son's doing this. You got one son's doing this, and you got another one's doing that, and you got this and this and this and this." Well, I'm not so much measure my the success of the family based off of their economic success so much, but I really would try to measure that off of how well are we able to keep our relationships together? How well are we able to uplift each other as a family? We don't run from each other. We everybody has boundaries, and sometimes people break those boundaries, and you sometimes have to uh, um, sort of earn the trust of other people to enter back into their sphere, their circle of trust.
Yeah,
But at the same time, those are all tools and goals that we I think have been pretty successful at. I mean, my kids, or at least what I have always wanted and we enjoy. Today's Friday. Friday's my favorite day. You know why? Because Friday night, all my kids come over and hang out at my house. And sometimes I go to their house, and it doesn't have to be mine. The point is that they come and we all come together to do something because we actually love and enjoy each other. And it's where we would want to be. And I hope that continues for them. And Hannah's going to be having a baby. She could be having it today, dude. I think is today the 22nd. Oh no, 22nd's the due
first.
date. So any day, man. Like we've been waiting
Yeah,
for this little baby. So we're super stoked about that. And you guys out there listening, I wish you all the best in your families. My heart breaks. When Zach's story, um, it breaks my heart because I know how much it means to have your son in your life and be able to be there for them, and I know how much it means to them to have you in their life, Zach. I want to try to help in any way I can. I fortunately or unfortunately, whatever, I didn't have to experience that type of conflict in our family. I mean, we had our disagreements, but we never broke. It
right.
never broke apart. And I'm forever grateful for that. And I hope that my wife is too, by the way. Pretty
Yeah,
sure she is, but
I'm pretty sure
hopefully.
she is. So, I mean, I hope that nobody ever has that experience. The
Yeah.
experience that I went through to try to be my son's dad and still continuing to like, you know, it's high conflict way too often,
Yeah.
and over little petty things that shouldn't be of any significance, but that um, somebody wants to blow up and make it, the end of the world. And it's learning skills like this, and if everybody had this kind of skill in their life, if they had this understanding of how their emotions and stuff really, are primal and controllable, and that by that control you're going to have better results based on what you really want. But people don't think about that stuff, and so and my guidance on picking a person was not, I had no guidance. I did it by myself, and
Mm,
so my intention is that my son doesn't, he will not just go out there and pick girls willy-nilly based on whatever emotion he's feeling in that moment, which is what I was allowed or trained to do. And then I'm intending to guide him to show him what it is to put together a good relationship and what it means to be really impactful in choosing the right person, designing his life as he really intends, and then putting
yeah.
those things into place, and learning skills like this, learning how to be in control and to see yourself beyond just that emotional reaction in the moment, and having the power to choose how you want to show up to get the results you want to have, and that he has all that power.
Yeah, and I think, I think people get scared. They avoid the opportunity because it really is an opportunity, man. It's maybe it is because I don't know if it's just because we've by all measure, I think we've had a successful run of it that I am able to champion it so much, I guess, or want to champion it so much. But I really think that people are missing out on they're missing what it is that marriage brings to your own individual life. I'm not talking about economics, dude. Screw economics. I'm just talking about like, there's benefits to that too, being married together too. But I'm just talking about what is it that feels your soul. What makes you feel like that life is worth living. Is different for everybody, but make no mistake, dude, it's not going to be the shallow stuff. And you might not know that now. Like we're talking about, here we are, 45 years old, Zach, but we weren't always this old. There was a time when it was easier to say, when it would have been easier just to say, hey, I'm just going to go have fun. I'm through my 20s. Young women, most of the time, I think, are being told that if they go out and chase the career, nothing wrong with the career, ladies, nothing wrong with the career. Go do it. It benefits your family too. But I think what you'll find, you ask other gals who are 30, 35 years old, whether or not they are wanting to be more focused on their career, or they're starting to wonder, what the heck am I missing in life? I'm not really feeling really fulfilled. It's because that primal instinct can be as much of a deterrent, or it can throw you off rails, but it's also something that is beautiful and good and fulfilling as well. It's a matter of balance between the two. I think everything is a matter of trying to reach the right balance. And so often we're being invited to say, hey, just indulge in this over here and think of only yourself, the things that will just gratify you yourself and independently, that you'll be. There's no independence in this, dude. Like, think like, why would you want independence in? Yes, you want to be able to be free to make your own choice in it, but why would you want to be alone? Like, there's no connection, there's no life, there's no love in independence that way. So like, so what I'm trying to get across is the sooner that I think people recognize that this is where I guess the Goldilocks zone, I get, you hear people talk about the Goldilocks zone. In other words, where's the best balance point between this whole issue? I think the sooner that people are recognizing of what to look for and how to navigate to it, the more likely they're to feel fulfilled in life. That's all I'm trying to offer with people. This discussion we're having here is one that I usually almost always will find myself in with somebody who I actually care about having a relationship or being a friend with. It seems sort of strange, and I get a little bit of my kids give me a hard time about it a little bit. They'll bring a friend over, and if it's a good friend, somebody who's hanging, I'll be like, okay, dude, come sit down next to me at the bar, at the table here at the breakfast bar, not the real bar, but breakfast bar at the house. I'm gonna show you something real quick. And I kind of do out this little drawing and stuff. I was gonna show you guys the drawing today, but I don't really have the PowerPoint done for all the image. But still the same discussion we're having now. And the reason I do is because, maybe they don't always agree with me, right? And that's fine. You don't have to agree with me, but at least you'll know where it is that I'm working from. And if you think that you can work with me on that too, I'd love to have a discussion with you to help you maybe see through some of those difficult times in ways that you might not have before. So yeah, I mean, if we maybe Zach, what you could do is, if we had some different people who were going through different struggles, not that we're going to necessarily have a therapy session on live or something like that, but
Yeah.
we could talk through some of those, maybe just talk about them in a generic term. We don't have to put names and faces to them specific, but we could
Right.
talk about those and then say, maybe what do you think's going on here, and how could we deal with that?
Yeah.
I'd be open to
I
that if you
think
guys would.
I think having, it's just you and I, and
Whoever.
and mostly, what the most important thing is that I'm getting a lot from this, and I think you are, and we're having a nice conversation. And if people listen and enjoy it, great. And but I think going through it again, spending a little more time on it together, and like coming through the scenarios, like thinking of 3 or 4 different dad scenarios that we might come up with, and only dads because I'm a dad, so I'm a man,
Yeah.
and so it's easier for us to come from that perspective as opposed
Yeah.
to what a woman would go through, because I don't know what that's like, and I don't know that I want to. So I'm
Yeah.
pretty happy being here in my space where I am right now, but. Going through that PowerPoint, making it really nice, and then having a real clear, concise thing without me chiming in.
I think it's good to have you chime in
Yeah,
myself, but
yeah. I
otherwise,
think having it be real pointed, like getting into the details and like really explaining it, and then maybe going through it through a couple different scenarios and stuff, and I can play those scenarios. So something to work on. We talk about doing this. We're gonna do this weekly at 6 a.m. Mountain Standard Time every week, and maybe we'll be on time next time. My fault.
yeah. Well,
But
what I'll do then is I will.
we're on StreamYard today, in case you can't see over Seth's head, and I think that this platform's a little more conducive to getting the message spread out there and getting it in more places earlier, and I think that the platform's a lot more user friendly just from using it today than how YouTube is, even though or Zoom, even though I've dropped off.
So for StreamYard, does StreamYard go up on any of the other platforms? Like, where's I want some place where people can make comments and stuff.
We're on live right now we are currently live on YouTube at the moment.
Oh, okay.
So, and this is the free version, so I wanted to check it out and see how I liked it, and I do like it. And so I'm going to pay for the paid version for after this one, and then with the paid version, we can go live in 3 different places. So we could go YouTube,
TikTok,
Facebook, and we can't do TikTok. YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So I have a LinkedIn account. I don't ever use it, so this could be This could be my first soiree into diving into LinkedIn. I need one more social media, at least, to take up a lot more of my time. So I'm looking for.
I think
just
we can talk about maybe
Threads, right? How about Threads? Is that a thing still?
Yeah, I don't know. We could we can maybe talk about it a little more offline or whatever. But I do think that LinkedIn, maybe if we talk about it in context of like business resolution, that kind of thing, or just conflict resolution in business, we could talk about that a little bit too. I really like the idea of like I want to see the YouTube chats. I want to see what the comments are and things like that. I think that'll help us. So if you guys are out there listening, I don't know if Zach, if you put this on Kids Deserve Dads on Facebook, and so if it's streaming there or whatever, I don't even know if anybody even got a link to or a notification to see this one yet. But if they, when you guys do see this stuff, put the comments down there, man, because it helps us to kind of know get the feedback and give us some specific topics on what would be helpful to you guys. So please leave like, share, subscribe.
I think having the Facebook one's going to be really huge for us to be able to do that. The Facebook one, those are the most followers and stuff, had the most interaction, at least on the pages that I run. And we got some really good things coming out with Facebook and some live streaming. This will not be my only show weekly. And the group that I'm putting together, and it's not completely finished yet, so we're going to announce it probably this weekend. But that I'll be doing the show with you, Seth, weekly, and I'll be doing this other show with this other group. The intention is to do something around shared parenting, father's rights, custody, support, basically all the things, conflict resolution, all the things that we're talking about in the non-custodial parent movement will be in this talk, and we have a woman on there, so it's going to be 3 dudes and a lady. So it'd be kind of fun to have her on there to see things from a different perspective. And the guys we got are characters, so it's 4 people who definitely have big personalities with a lot of energy and are entertaining, all being together to talk about a topic that we are all involved in, and from different reasons and whys, and from across the country. The lady's from Wyoming, so I'm gonna, I gotta surround myself with the best always, and Wyoming folk are the best folk. So sorry for everybody.
Well,
else.
Dude, I mean, I don't know.
Don't come though. We don't need you.
Yeah, I don't know if I was misunderstanding or not, but dude, that is a forum that would be really fun to be involved in. It's kind of like Oh,
So we
okay.
can have guests. So those StreamYard, we can have guests and stuff. It's probably like an off topic. It doesn't matter. No one's watching this right now, and it's just on our thing. It's gonna be like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
first video. So, but
yeah.
I think the most important thing is like, we're gonna have guests on there, and we can have guests. We could have like this conversation, and you can come on there, and you can have 20 minutes that we interview you and stuff and talk about it with you, and then we can talk before and afterwards, and I can pop you in, pop you out. This platform is StreamYard's pretty badass. I should be a spokesperson for StreamYard. StreamYard, listen, first time, I love you guys.
It's
But
working
I think
nice.
that it's going to be a really good group, and we're going to cover some really great topics. And it's something that's
Yeah.
not being done in this area. And there are there's 24 million kids out there without dads in their homes right now. And so
Mhm.
what does that mean? There's 20 million dads that are uninvolved.
Don't have the kids in their home.
Yeah, and that are looking for support and connection and purpose. And this is gonna be a group of guys and a lady coming together to bring some wisdom and some light and some support and content that's gonna be powerful, not just showing up to talk about nothing, but to really, it's not Seinfeld. We're going to talk about something, and we're going to dive into the
Well,
topic.
like the Whatever podcast, right?
And,
You got you
and also nothing, right? Yeah, whatever comes up. Yeah, I love whatever. Or I mean, there's so many good ones that are out there like that. I mean, whatever ones around dating, and I mean, I think the stuff that they cover with regards to how our society is set up so inappropriately right now, where we're basically for the last 50 years been training women to be men, and that what a woman should try to do is to take on the man's role and be a man, because being a strong, empowered, independent woman is what a woman should strive for, not being a team player and a support staff and a builder of a family, but that they should like go out there and build a career and just hook up with all the guys they can and have no real connection, and that all those things have impacts on your body and your mind and how you see the world. And so we're basically we're giving people things that over the history of mankind, as we've grown and our minds and our bodies and our instincts have developed and our society's developed, we're now telling everybody that everything we did in the past is wrong and we need to do this new thing, and that guys are disposable. We don't need them. All we need you to do is go out there and give us money. But most big jobs, everybody that works on a road, I very rarely see a lady out there working on a road. I don't see a lady working on windmills. I don't see a lady putting in the plumbing. I mean, very rarely. Those are the exceptions, not the rules. And nobody wants to do that stuff. But I like to have indoor plumbing. I think that's a really nice convenience. And I think having electricity and picking up the trash and being a garbage man, being a bus driver, those are real jobs, and that real people do them, and they should be honored and respected and supported. And there comes a time where I feel like we've become so independent, so I don't need anybody else. I can do it all by myself. That we've lost the value of what having a team is, and we are better together. And having a team like you and your wife, you guys are better together, man. Like if you guys split up, you would both not be as good as you are right now. And that having a team is where it's really at. And
can have a battle buddy, right?
Yeah, we've been basically saying, hey, you know what? Just everybody's disposable. Everything's disposable. The first person to quit wins. And let's go out there and just, look out for yourself, number one, and fuck everybody else. And that's led us to a world that is really ignorant and sad and lonely, and you listen to these shows and stuff, and hearing ladies in their 40s and stuff. I mean, I hear it all the time on TikTok when I'm trying to look for content and stuff, and complain about I can't find anybody that wants to date me. Well,
you turned yourself into something that you didn't realize wasn't catch material. Right. Nobody wants it. Not that way.
And you having a job that makes $100,000 a year is great. And also, that's not what guys are looking for.
Yeah, and they don't care. Guy doesn't care. Yeah. In fact, he in some ways rather you didn't, only just because he feels like that's where he wants to fulfill that role. I think that
there's for millennia.
There's a whole different we're in a society or an experience right now of ever changing definitions, right? So when you're saying what does it mean to be independent? Well, what does that mean for a woman, right? What does it mean for a man? Well, you could be independent, but is it what does it does leaning or going against, actively fighting against what your natural instinct as a mother or even a spouse or a or a wife would be, is suppressing that and go against that, mocking it, just turning away from it. Is that really freedom? Is that really independence? And so that's
Was it
really
more
what we're
slavery and
talking
more?
about.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
why do we why it's not even so much of a why. What do we do now, right? We could talk about why, and that can be instructive, but what do you do now? And the one thing I really enjoy about when I watch the whatever podcast is that they're still kind of superficial, right? And it's still kind of like this, I don't know. I personally think that there's still some things that they're talking about that aren't exactly getting to the heart of it. But there are some moments where I'm like, okay, ladies, can you now see, right? Can you now see that what you're doing is not actually setting yourself up for success, for living a fulfilled life? You're setting yourself up for fun in your 20s, and then what after? You know what I mean? Then you're
I think they
screwed
bring up
by
some
then.
good points. They bring up some good points around like the sexual value and stuff, right? Like guys get better as they get older, right? We produce more, we're calmer, we're more, we're more, you know, focused, that kind of stuff. A lot of those skills we get as we keep getting older and older to get better at. But what guys are
Mhm.
looking for in women is I mean, guys want somebody who's loyal, who's kind, who's pretty. I mean,
Well, but I
you
think
know,
they want somebody who, I know for me, like
yeah,
I wanted to have kids. I want to have kids, right? I don't want,
yeah,
I'm looking for, I would want to have a woman who wants to do that. Like that was one of the things about that. If there's any amount of luck to it, it's just the fact that we grew up, my wife and I, we grew up in families and an environment that put a lot of emphasis on that kind of thing. So by the
yeah,
time we were 16, 17 years old, that was what was we wanted in our life. And maybe it's luck, but maybe we did get lucky that the other person wanted the same, and so we
right.
came together. And in our night, certainly naive, right? You don't go jump into something that you don't know about without being some type of naive, right? And there's no way you can really go into a marriage knowing everything. You figure it out as you go on, and that's part of what being married is. But if you don't have the right tools to do it, and that's what I was talking about today. But if you're not prepared with some of those right tools, it can be pretty precarious. And it was for us. And so what
Right.
I'm saying, hey guys, is if I would like for people to recognize at a young age, you talk about dads now that aren't in their homes with their kids. Yeah, I'd certainly like to try, if at all, if I don't know, maybe it's presumptuous for me to think I can even be in help at all, but if I could, I'd like to try to help people come to some type of better resolution with that. But more importantly, I mean, maybe not more importantly, but also importantly, I'd like to try to help the younger guys understand, and girls, and a lot of it is the girls, dude, because they're the ones who the guys in some ways are following, right? They're the ones who the
Well,
guys are kind of setting, okay, what they're the target. So the
yeah,
guys are chasing the target, and they're getting led around too outside of what would actually be fulfilling for them unwittingly. Everybody kind of is. And then so if I can help somehow bring some clarity to that, so that people could at least make a decision on which way they wanted to go that was much more informed with some self-awareness. Because I think the self-awareness part is what's kind of masked a little bit. And if you can become a little bit more self-aware about what your experience is, then you're more likely to make a decision that's going to be more fulfilling in your life. And I don't want to be presumptuous as to what that decision needs to be, but I do think that I'd like to offer some feedback on something people may not have considered, that that they would if they knew.
I feel like what we've done is we've taken the family out of raising kids. We've taken the dad out of raising kids. We've put government and institutions into the child rearing roles. We have daycares all over the place, raising kids all the time. We have schools raising kids, and in the school situations, I read this awful book and great book by Gabor Mate.
Okay.
Oh my God, it was painful to read this book because it was so heartbreaking. But that we have our kids, it's like the Lord of the Flies. Like we're living the Lord of the Flies. Our kids are raising themselves, and so who are they looking to for guidance? They don't. Their parents aren't around. They don't have a dad. You know, half the kids right now, 40% of the kids don't have a dad at their house, and so they don't have that guidance. You know, their mom's out working and doing a job or two because she has to provide now because she's independent and she doesn't have anybody to fall back on, and so the kids have to be raised by somebody else. And these people don't have necessarily the kids' best interest at heart. They're just trying to make some money and do a job to get through, right? And so everybody's just flown through this experience, and these kids are internalizing all the things they're being taught that and seeing, whether they're even it's being consciously given to them. They're sponges and they're smarter than we are, and they're getting it all and more. And then they're raising each other. And then the cool kid who's doing whatever, you know, is now everybody's looking to that kid for guidance on how to be the person that they want to be. And they're looking to their peers for how to show up. And the peers are all kids with no experience.
You know, the thing as you were talking about this that came to mind was, you know, young men who grow up without fathers. What ends up happening with them? And if we look statistically, there's statistics, there's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics, right? So if we just look, but if we look at some of the numbers, right, of what, I don't know if it's even statistics or just exactly what's going on, then you can't send me messages, and then it's not going to distract me. But at any rate, yeah. So let me just say this, and then we'll talk about this, and maybe we'll do this on a specific episode. But what I mentioned a little while ago about with some of my kids, the fight or flight response was really intense with kids who grow up in an environment where it's a survival environment, right? Or if you can't trust your mama, who can you trust, right? Like my kids came to me from an environment that was way less than desirable. And if you live your life in a survival mode, you're going to have a hard time leaning into connection because you fear it. And if you fear the connection, then you're fearing what is life-giving. And so this is one reason why you would lead to really like a lot of depression. And ultimately in young men, you lead to violence because then there's no reason. If there's no connection, there's nothing life-giving, then what difference does it make whether I'm violent or not? I just need to get mines. And so maybe we can talk about that sometime, but yeah, we do got to wrap it up, man. So I look forward to the next one. And if you're going to be doing one that's not on Fridays, let me know, and I will be there. I would love to have with the group discussion and stuff. So I look forward to that.
Dude, I'm definitely planning on. We started talking about it yesterday. Actually, was the initial talk about it, but it's because of the couple lives I've done on Facebook recently, where everybody's like, "Man, like this is." We had like 25 people watching it, which I know is not like a huge number by any stretch, but like 25 people on the second show is pretty freaking awesome. Like that's a lot of people coming on and checking something out. And so when we did that, both of them were really impactful, and then people were like, "Man, I want it." So the next person, so the first two people that I've interviewed on Facebook Live, you want to know who's a group? Those guys are going to be on the team, and then the person I'm doing one with today at 11:30 Mountain Standard Time. That'll be the fourth musketeer in the group,
okay.
And that's who we're gonna have the whole show.
So what are you doing? You're doing like them individually, and then we all come together. Is that the idea?
No, we're gonna do it all as one. So I did them all individually, not thinking of this, and then actually Alicia came to me with the idea yesterday, and so she's like, "I want to do this with you guys," and I had been kind of tossing it out there with the other two guys in the group, and like Ryan has 200,000 followers on Facebook. Kenneth Rosa built a large portion of the Father's Rights Movement, which has 800,000 followers, and I'm coming in with a solid 6,000.
Yeah, I got a few on Facebook. I don't have a whole lot on.
And I was like, you know what? I think that so these guys are really interested in doing it, so they want me to host it and run it, and basically put this group together and stuff, and then bring content, bring ideas, and I think this is such a powerful context to set in your life. And if you can master this skill, the benefits you're gonna have in your life, I mean, astronomical difference in who you are and how you show up and the results you get. I think this is a life changer 100%, and that's why I think doing it this time, doing it another time, I mean, I think this is something we could do every couple months, because it's such a powerful and impactful discussion that even though we did it, it should be done again, because somebody might find us now with this,
Yeah.
and this is the thing that impacts your life more than anything else they've ever done.
I'm happy to do it as many times as anybody sees beneficial. So I'm right there with you, man. I hope it doesn't get boring to anybody, but Zach's right. Life changing for me. If it can be for you, I'm stoked.
Yeah, love it, man. All right, buddy, Seth. Love you, man. I hope you have a great
Cool,
day.
man. Love you too, bud.
Give the famous some love and enjoy your dinner tonight with them. It sounds fantastic. What are you guys having? That's what's every
Oh, well,
family.
I don't know. It's usually ever since I think probably 2011 or 10, maybe it's always been pizza night. But
Dope.
pizza, you can only have so much pizza. Last night or last Friday, we had a bunch of steaks. So I don't know. Might be pizza night again. We'll
Pizza
see what
night sounds
happens.
good. There you
Yeah.
go. All right, man. Ham bones. Get it up.
Yeah.
Go, folks.
Yeah, for sure, man. All right.
All
Thanks,
right, buddy,
Zach.
man.
We'll see you later,
I love
brother.
you, man. See you later.
All right. Bye.